I've put together a list of supplies for the beginner artist who wants to work in acrylic and collage, and drawing materials too, the same things that I use. Here's a few things about the materials. For kind of a student grade paint that's pretty good quality, I recommend the Liquitex Basics. Also, Blick has their Blick Studio acrylics, which are about the same quality. Arteza has a decent student quality paint that's available from their website. Blick Matte Acrylics, this is their own brand. It's different from the Blick Studio acrylics. This is a line of kind of student grade or almost craft grade paints, but they're nicely opaque and they come in really a lot of colors. That's another option. You just don't have any transparent colors. For brushes, I like these Dynasty brushes available at Blick. I get the 3/4 inch, the 1/2 inch, and the 1 inch. These are kind of my basic go-to brushes. Dynasty also makes some different shapes of brushes. I've more recently looked at finer brushes, and these filbert shaped brushes from Utrecht are pretty nice. Filbert and Bright, those are the ones I'm getting. These would be sort of extra. I'd see these are basics, these are optional. For paper, I like to use this Stonehenge printmaking paper. Well, it used to be fairly inexpensive. Now it's around $4 for $4.19 a sheet. A sheet is 22 by 30. So I get it in those large sheets and cut it to the size I want. These I think are 8 by 8. It's a medium weight. It's like a 90-pound watercolor paper, but the surface is really smooth. So I like that. It leaves your options open. If you want texture, you can put texture on it, but you don't have a default texture on it. A paper I've been using more recently is this Bristol from Blick that comes in pads of a few sizes. 9 by 12 is this, and it's also a very smooth paper. Decent quality. Larger than the 9 by 12 though, I do find that when I do paintings on even 11 by 14, they can kind of buckle. So just be wary of that. You know, if you get a bigger size, you can maybe gesso it on both sides. That can help to keep it flat, or get a bigger size and cut it up. For a palette, you can use a paper plate, a ceramic plate, a plastic palette, whatever. I like these disposable palettes. And even though, yeah, you throw stuff out, I find them really convenient. So I work in paint and collage. So for collage paper, you can buy collage paper, but it's so fun to paint your own. And I use what I call cheap drawing paper. It's Blick's white sulfite drawing paper. I get the 9 by 12. It comes in a few different weights. I get the 60-pound weight to paint for collage papers. It's fairly lightweight, but it's sturdy enough. The 50-pound is fine too, but it's even less sturdy. For drawing on, to use as kind of scrap paper for, I don't know, just practicing lines or something, I like the 80-pound. So I get a ream of each of those if I was starting out. A ream is 500 sheets. It seems like a lot, but you want to have more than you think you'll ever use, just so you never feel like it's precious. For collage, I use matte medium, but for a beginner, I really suggest these glue sticks. I like the Yoo-Hoo. There's other brands. They're perfectly adequate to collage, and the matte medium technique takes some practice. Glue stick doesn't, so start with glue stick. Drawing tools. I love having the ability to make really fine lines. So these micron pens I find pretty essential. They come in different widths. The 05 is one that I use a lot, and I put that on the list as a pack of 5. Pencils. I just keep, regular HB pencils or number 2 pencils or whatever they are, and then some other pencils as they come my way. Pencils are essential. Any particular pencil, to me, isn't essential. So this is a 10B pencil. It's really soft. I don't use it that way very often. I just use it to make lines. I also have these pencils that I think are HB, but they're not about to say. They're like number 2 pencils. Anyways, I just keep some pencils around. Palette knife. I like this square edge palette knife. It's from Liquitex Freestyle. It's the number 7 small. It's just my favorite palette knife. I'd always used more shaped spatula style palette knives, but when I was introduced to this, I just love the way you can move paint around with it. And the palette knife is for mixing paint on the palette. You can also paint with it. Essential for a beginner? Well, when you start to mix colors, it's probably essential. Bells and whistles, non-essential but fun to have in your drawing kit. I love these Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2 crayons. These are the water-soluble ones. The color is really intense. The pigment load is great. They come in a billion colors. And if you want to use them as watercolor, you can do that. But I generally use them just for their line quality. And then I put a little coat of matte medium on them so that they don't smear. Paint markers that are opaque. That's the ticket. I love these Posca markers, Uni Posca markers. They come with different size and styles of tips. There's a nice bullet tip, fine tip, so forth. And they come in a billion colors. You can get them open stock at Blick. More recently, I've tried these Artistro paint marker pens. And you can get those from the Artistro website. These seem to be a pretty good quality, and also they come in some great colors. They come in sets as well. And then even more recently, I've discovered these Arteza markers, and these are the fine point, but they do come in a few different tip styles and sizes. And these are lovely. They're opaque. They come in a lot of different colors. They're easy to use. So the paint pens, are they essential? Depends on what you're doing. Crayons, again, it depends on what you're doing. If you really like to make lines and use a line making tool, get good ones. If you're more into just paint and collage, maybe you acquire some paint pens as needed. Another thing I have on my list is a sketchbook. Your sketchbook is totally a personal choice of A, whether to use it, and B, what kind, what size you want. This one is a brand that I recommend. It just has a nice quality of paper. It's not too thick, it's not too precious, but it's sturdy enough and it holds up to various media. I think I used this for figure drawing. Okay, so it certainly held up to that. But this size is a little large for my kind of regular fooling around in a sketchbook, which I don't do that much. The other end of the scale is this small. This is like moleskin. It lies pretty flat. The spiral binding is really the best for lying flat, but these are pretty good. The thing I'm not crazy about a sketchbook is you put acrylic paint in here, and then even though it's dry, you shut it, you stick it on a shelf, and 6 months later, the pages are all sticking. So how do you deal with that? One thing you can do is just give them a coat of cold wax medium or car wax. But then you can't paint on top of it because the paint won't stick. An alternative to sketchbooks is a stack of cheap drawing paper. And for that, I would recommend the 80-pound cheap drawing paper. One thing I like about working on separate sheets of paper is that you can work on 10 pieces at once and you don't have to wait for them to dry. If you really want to commit to something like a 1 piece a day or 2 pieces a day, then a sketchbook is perfectly fine if there's any drying time required. If you're just working in drawing materials, sometimes that's not an issue.